It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Monday. Gary, hello. How are you?
Good morning, everybody. How are you? How you doing? Hope everybody had a happy Easter.
Yeah.
Interesting weekend. I'll tell you this, so I do love the fact that I can fall asleep on planes.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing ever. When you get on a plane, put in your earbuds, and with the noise cancellation stuff they have today, everything goes quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was another one of those days where I got on the plane and about, I was talking to the gentleman next to me, and then about 15 minutes, when we took off, it's like, okay, let me just sit back here. Next thing I know, I hear, rah, 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 rah. What's that? It's a pilot saying, we're about to land.
I always have time. Yes. I always have an issue with time, not being able to finish articles that I'm reading. It's like, can we make one more round before we land? I'm trying to finish this article. It's just, I bury my head because, I get the Wi-Fi for free. Which is, according to American, I think everybody's going to get it starting next year.
If you're a Advantage member, you will, which means everyone will get it if you wish to become an Advantage member, which there is no requirement for that. But that's what I read. January, though, that's coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now,
I'm an Advantage member, so I guess
they
I'll get
did
that.
say limited flights, so I don't know what that means.
Mm. Yeah. Right.
I don't. So, but you and
But
I.
I'm always reading, and it's always like I find something like, oh, this is great. All right, we're going to start our approach into DFW. Oh man, can we make one more round?
Yeah.
I don't have time to read all this.
That's not that bad because the Wi-Fi stays on till I land, and then I just switch over.
Yeah. Yeah. My problem is that every article I read, I have to research at least 10 to 12 items in that article. That's just the nature of everything. Yesterday was one of those days. It's like, okay.
Good. We can have...
Because I trust no source completely.
We can have that great discussion because, boy, that hit home. We really didn't have much of a pre-show meeting.
Yeah, right.
And so when you said that, I just burst out laughing because it was like trying to figure out what happened Friday night and reading everything. Wasn't that a class in calculus?
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, just how they explained it in legal terms. And I go back to a guy who once told me, a guy who was an agent. He was an agent for NFL players. And he also was an agent for radio people. And I used him one time to review a contract. But he had given me advice before I had him review a contract that I was going to sign. And he said, when you read a contract and you don't understand what it means, you read it back to the people and say, what does this mean? And they say, for example, if it says, if they tell you, I don't understand what this means. Well, it means a chicken crosses the street. Write it that way.
Mm-hmm. I've always done that, yeah.
And I did that in a contract that I got that was like 17 pages long, and it was for a radio job.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept asking that, and I get a contract that's 1 page. After asking and they started getting a little frustrated, and I said, why are you getting frustrated? You're writing something, it's a contract, I'm simply trying to get clarification. What does it mean? And when you tell me, I say, well, write it that way. I want it very, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And this NFL agent who just reviewed my he wasn't my agent, but he reviewed it for me, said, it's one of the best contracts I've ever seen written. He goes, you did exactly what I said. He goes, yeah.
Yeah, I've always done that because they get too far into we're going to start. These are the definitions of the terms of the contracts of the words we're going to be using. No, just use the words that everybody knows.
Right. Use regular words.
And so if you need to state the name of one party each time that you're referring to that party in the contract, then state their name.
And we'll get into that here in just a couple seconds, but I just wanted to start off by saying I did read. I promised that everybody who wished my father a happy birthday, on social media that I would read every single one to my father.
Yeah.
And I did.
Good.
And it was pretty long, and he smiled. He smiled the entire time. He was smiling.
Good.
The cognitive abilities are, they're becoming less and less. Each and every day, and it's tough. It's tough to watch it, but he was all smiles, and I did read every single listener who wrote to me. Every single one I read to him. So I just wanted. It was a promise I made, and it was funny because when I first approached, my siblings with it, they said, we don't know if he, and I said, well, let me just try. Let me just start going through it. And then he just smiled the whole time. I said, you get that one? I said, now this is a listener. This is a listener. This is one of the relatives is a listener. And so he understood it. He's like, and then one listener, I'm paraphrasing here, said, say happy birthday to the man who can't be BS'd and always DTJ. And I read that to him, which is anybody who knows if you're a long-time listener to the show, my father always said, you're going to find out in life, Gary, that people like to be BS'd. And the bigger the BS, the more they eat it up. And I said, no, Dad, people want the truth. He goes, no, they don't.
That's truer more than ever today.
Yes. And so and then the other one was DTJ meant do the job. And when we were young, we tried to do everything to get out of the job or complain and whine. And that meant don't whine, just get the job done. Don't whine. And so DTJ. So the fact that, that kind of stuff that listeners related. And he said, you said that? I said, no, this came from the listener. And then a couple times he would ask me, well, how did they know? And I said, because I said it on the radio. So, you and I have talked about dementia a lot, because we've been affected by it before. It's, to me, as I was driving, from my dad's house to the hotel and even on the plane this morning, you shake your head and you're just like, it's the worst because a person, and there's still a lot of him left, but a lot of, but not all the time. And that's the toughest thing when a person, well, I'll be blunt, when a person leaves before they die.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about as we age, the only thing that we are our memories. Our life is everything, and being able to recall all of that helps you keep everything in perspective for the day, whatever the day might hold. And it's quite unfortunate witnessing it. We dealt with it over the weekend with a loved one, and it's compartmentalizing it is something. As we grow older and become their caretakers, it's harder and harder to do. But it's also harder for the generation behind us. When the grandchildren, who are now adults, also, go to visit, go to spend time with them, there are things that they don't understand because they haven't been there for so many of the moments that we adult children have. And that's, again, it becomes just part of the process in the caretaking. I'm grateful that both of my parents and my wife's parents have people that are able to take care of them. It's something that I'm just grateful for. One family member over the weekend, told another family, a family member said, she said, I'm sorry I'm such a burden and so, difficult to take care of. And that family member just replied and said, it's an honor to do this. This is what we do. This is what we live for at this age. And it really is, it's impossible to be there for every moment, but that's why, again, I'm fortunate that there are plenty of professional caretakers out there. I met one who became a flight attendant one time, and he was so good on that flight. There was a mom with a young baby that was having issues and getting sick, and he just wanted to, and we were all at the very back of the plane. And so he took care of everything, took care of mom, the baby, the other passengers, and was very responsive that entire flight, did such a good job. And then at the end, when we were getting off the plane, someone asked him, well, he goes, this is much easier than my last job. And they asked him what he did, and he said, I was a hospice nurse. And when you look at that, it was like, well, okay, that's what makes you. I've always told my grandkids, whatever you do in life, apply care to it. Care about your job at the moment. Care about whatever task you're trying to do at the moment, as if you're doing it for a family member, whether you're getting paid to do that or not. Yeah. And, it was clear that man was in that mode and was that kind of person, and it really showed. It's kudos to the people who do that or have done that at any point in their life.
Well, all I got to say is my siblings, and you go through a lot, when everybody is older and you've known your siblings for decades, and then you see them operate they're operating right now. Yeah. And my siblings are saints. Yeah. They're as close as you can get to saints. Yep. I mean, the sacrifices that they make and the attitude that they have is just and the love that they have for my father, because they're there every day. Yeah. They're there, and it's just, it is, but that's some of the, and I've said this before, when great tragedies happen, there are also great things that happen in that, and there's things you learn about people. And I learned that I come from a great family and have wonderful siblings. And we were all sitting there as I was getting ready to leave, and it was, my siblings and my brother-in-law, and I just said, I said, there are some great things that come out of this, and one of them is the trust that just automatically appeared. Nobody talked about it. Yeah. The confidence, everybody having each other's back. I mean, those are the kind of things that when you go through, something, like dementia with somebody. Right. And when somebody, like I said, my dad's 99 years old, and he's not even the same as he was. That picture that everybody sees on Facebook and that I posted, that was Christmas time. Okay, that was Christmas, and I took that picture or my sister took it. She walked by and said, take a picture of of us, because I didn't know how long his cognitive abilities would be there. And that was really the last time that he had 100% of his cognitive abilities. And, they're declining pretty fast. Yeah. And it's, it's tough. It's very, very tough to see. But, my story is not special.
It's not unique.
It's not unique. You've gone through it. The only reason I bring it up is not to get sympathy, but to relate to people, to everybody else who's going through the exact same thing out there. Millions of families go through it. Millions of families stick together. We talk a lot about politics and what's going on in D.C. and, just the challenges and problems in the world. But I think it's important to point out the love that exists between people and that unites them and unites. There's a reason that the family unit exists. And when you see it, when you see the love and the sacrifice that people put in, it's worth noting and talking about. And recognizing that it happened. So this really, when we talk about these things, I've always said this before, I've been so blessed. I who has their father for 99 years? Who has their father till they're retired? I'm so blessed. I just want to put it out because I know other people are going through the same thing, and just recognize the greatness of so many people taking care of their parents and their loved ones at times when they can't do it themselves. And it needs to be recognized that there are incredible human beings out there that love and take care of their family and friends. Yeah. And
it's amazing. My mom has a nurse that comes to the house a few times a week. One of the nurses comes to the house a few times a week. And her first day she started, my mom asked her where she came from. Where did you live, before you lived here? She says, well, about less than a year ago, I moved here from a small town, a very small town in Texas. And she named the town, and it was my mom's hometown where she grew up. And she says, well, what did you do there? She says, well, there I was a hospice nurse, and I took care of a man who had lung cancer and emphysema. And my mom said, that's interesting. She said, yes, and after he passed, I took care of his wife who died of breast cancer. And my mom says, well, that's very interesting, because my twin brother and his wife, that's exactly what they suffered from in that town. And she gave the nurse the name. That nurse had been my mom's twin brother's caretaker for years. It went on for almost as a hospice nurse. It was about a year and a half, but she was a visiting nurse before that. So I think it was a total of about 3 years that she was familiar with him and lived in the house across the street, which used to be my great-grandmother's house.
Wow.
And, when you see people that again, do it and do it well, it's because they care. They put so much care into it for those patients, those professionals that are doing it. Quite often that is the case. And it's an understatement when I say it is greatly appreciated. It's everything for a family to know that those kind of people are out there on the professional level doing things that we as family caretakers can't do.
We've got a great show ahead. There's so much to talk about here.
Yeah, there is a lot.
In fact, one of the things is trying to simplify what happened over the weekend. That's actually the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle before you find yourself stranded roadside this spring. Begin your spring maintenance routine by inspecting your brake system and listen closely for any air leaks. During winter, water and moisture that builds up in your air brake system almost always freezes and turns to ice, which can damage your air valves, air dryers, and other essential components. Check and drain your air tanks to help keep water, contaminants, and corrosion at bay. Also, check your slack adjusters for proper stroke and lubrication. And check your brake lining or pads to ensure proper thickness.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up in the bottom of the hour, we will get to all this stuff that happened over the weekend and try to hopefully simplify it a little bit, because it was when I started reading it late Friday night and then into Saturday morning, I was like, okay, this is like calculus. This is trying to figure out what in the world everybody's talking about. And finally, was able to figure most of it out, I believe. But we'll get to that. Plus the Civil War in the Democratic Party, the whole David Hogue thing starting to boil now, isn't it?
Well, he was, in terms of, I guess, their party rules of how they elect leadership of the party, he was duly elected. What did you think you were going to get with David Hogue?
I know.
Where did you think this was going to go?
Oh, and the other one I saw, did you see the latest poll? The most negative, the Democrats think most negatively about about Fetterman, and what's his name, Stephen A. Smith. Mm-hmm. Those are the only ones that got, and those are the ones that are saying the Democratic Party's going in the wrong way. They get the most negative numbers from Democrats.
Well, it's something we've said about trying to moderate if you're a Democrat. You're not going to moderate. The young people are going to carve you out. The radicals are going to carve you out. Fetterman supports Israel. Oh, he's so done, especially with young Democrats. I don't know about his state, but if he wants to run for any other office, good luck with that. I think Governor Shapiro would have a hard time on the national stage getting to a primary.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And Stephen A. Smith, who would think of all the people that the young people would go, oh, no, he's not radical enough. Wow.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. You know, not hitting this the merits of what happened over the weekend with the Supreme Court yet. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I think there's two things that were going on over the weekend. First off, I think that Trump specifically, because of what he has gone through in the lawfare, I think he wants to point out every example. I think Trump believes, and I agree with him on this, that Trump believes that the media and the focus is always on what the executive branch does and what Congress does. Mm-hmm. And it seems as if many times that activist judges are not held to the same standard of following law and precedent as Congress and specifically the executive branch is. And with the lawfare that happened on cases that should have been dismissed but were not, that Trump, of anybody, has the right to promote the fact that, look, there are judges that are not doing their job. You know, what we see with these district court judges, they're not supposed to be doing it. The Supreme Court ruled on that. And I think that's the one thing that sticks with Trump. I know it sticks with us, because you and I have been talking about activist judges for the longest time that don't pay attention to the law. They just say, here's what I think and here's what I'm going to do. And there's never been a standard from the media or even the country that wants to hold judges and criticize judges as much as presidents and or Congress at times are criticized if they're riding the edge of the law.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's wrong. And if you criticize a judge, that's viewed as threatening them. And it's not.
Right.
That's the same thing as they're a branch of the government. They're the judiciary, whether they're on the federal level, the local level, whatever. But here we're talking about the federal level because of the district courts and what they did. Mm-hmm. There is this assumption to put them and put halos on judges as if they rise above everybody else and don't do anything wrong. And I think Trump, not just politically is doing it, but wholeheartedly believes, as I do, and I think you mostly do, I think you agree with me on this, that the judges have gone too far. The activist judges have gone too far. It was Sotomayor, right? Or was it Kagan? Sotomayor.
Yeah, Sotomayor.
Sotomayor, that one time speaking said, basically, we make law. Mm-hmm. Forgot the exact thing that she said, but that was saying
it was basically their duty to rewrite law, to make law from the bench,
right?
And then realized she was being recorded. Oops, I know we're not supposed to say those things, and then tried to dismiss it. But she really didn't walk back the statement because we know that's what they believe.
And the seriousness and damage that has come to this country by activist judges, to me, is way more than any executive branch violations that I know of. Mm-hmm. They've overturned, when they overturn it, rulings by activist judges, even in the Supreme Court, have done horrible law.
Yep.
You and I think about the whole Obamacare thing when Robert said, well, a tax is a penalty.
Yeah.
And a penalty is a tax. No, it's not.
No, it's
Congress
not.
Didn't write it that way.
Well, like we said earlier on contracts, if they meant it that way, they should write it that way.
Exactly. And so you have judges all the time not following what Congress has told them to do, and we pointed that out throughout the decades that we've been on the radio. You look at an executive branch overreach, even with, for example, Biden. Most of them get overturned. Mm-hmm. When they're unconstitutional, they get overturned. Mm-hmm. Now, if it's Democrat or if it's liberal judges in power, they may not get overturned. Because where you actually see the most activist judges, which are judges that are not following precedent, that's one of the things here that Alito said about this case. Mm-hmm. They're not following precedent. They're not doing it.
Right.
The Supreme Court just made a ruling on what?
Yeah.
the appeals court didn't come to a decision
Didn't come to a decision yet. You jumped the gun
right,
8 hours after it was filed.
Right. You jumped the gun. You didn't have the government give an argument. You can't do this.
Well,
it's wrong.
Explain the reasoning procedurally.
Yeah.
You can't.
No.
There is zero explanation here. Alito called it legally questionable, and I agree with that. I don't know what the remedy is because the decision is made. I don't know where, again, there was no opportunity procedurally, none. The Supreme Court just acted on this filing 8 hours after it was filed.
Yeah.
How do you not let the process in the lower courts play out first? My gosh. I mean, I thought because I was still awake late Friday night. Then Amy Howe posted something early Saturday morning, and I was awake again. And at that point, when she posted, Amy Howe, who writes for SCOTUS blog, she has her own blog as well, very knowledgeable, but she, at that point, had pointed out that it was expected Alito would make a statement, but at that point, early Saturday morning, when she posted her stuff on it, it had not happened. And then later when he pointed it out, it was spot on because, again, how do you not tell me procedurally how you justify this decision? Tell me how this is not an emotional decision by the rest of the justices.
Well, tell me if this is, because we have not talked about this in our pre-show meeting. So tell me if you have the same opinion that I do. It's almost as if they said, well, with Garcia, you didn't follow what we told you or what you should have done, and therefore we're going to rule on a completely separate case.
Right. We're going to apply it to this case.
We're just going to apply it when the lower courts haven't made any decision on it at all.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
At this point, but because you did this over here, we're just going to the Supreme Court. Tell me the last time the Supreme Court did anything proactively.
No,
they wait. I mean, how many times have we sat here and went, well, the Supreme Court refuses to hear it because you don't have standing. You don't have standing. That was the other thing.
Right.
Well, the people that claim they have standing in this case don't have standing.
Right.
And so just across the board, when you look at it, it's like, whoa. Now, we don't know what the final outcome is going to be because it's a temporary restraining order.
But at the very least, you will let the process, you allow the process at the lower court to continue before jumping the gun. I've never seen a jumping the gun. I can't remember a case where the high court jumped the gun like this.
No.
With a directive attached.
And so you get the same thing. Well, we don't do this except if it's Trump.
Yeah. No, that's
what I got out of it. We can do this because it's Trump and Trump is an exception. And it's like, no, he's not.
Right. Trying to right the wrong of some other case or something. Right. And you're overcorrecting here. I've never seen anything like this. I really haven't.
No. But I think there's two things. On the judges, I think Trump does want to know. I think we've talked about this. I think he does want to pick fights. I think he wants everything to eventually go to the Supreme Court. And again, the temporary, the Supreme Court may come back and say, no, it's fine. It might be a 5-4 or 6-3 vote, but they may say, no, you'll be able to do this because this was not a final ruling, as we know. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter. It's still, you wait for the appeals court to make a decision on it, and then it has to be filed based on that decision.
Yeah.
And so as Alito wrote, the court issued unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts a chance to rule.
Right.
Without hearing from the opposing party.
Right.
Within 8 hours of receiving the application, with dubious factual support for its order, and without providing an explanation for its order. And he's right on that. Thomas and Alito are absolutely right. And I think Trump wants to have the argument about judges. He wants to take that all because he believes that we have rot in the judicial system with judges.
Right.
And I think he thinks, and I think it's the correct way to go. It's not going to be pretty a lot of the times, but I think it's a correct way to go because you and I have been doing this for decades. We've been doing this, and there has never been. We talk about the three equal branches. Well, the criticism of the three equal branches are not the same.
No.
Judges are put on this pedestal as you can't criticize a judge.
Right.
You can't criticize a judge. If
Right.
you criticize a judge, that's an attack on the judicial system. Criticize the president, criticize Congress. You can't criticize a judge. They're on a pedestal up here. Put the halos on the judges. No.
You can't question anybody who wears a robe. Just ask my wife.
Right. But I was happy to see it. See, I think the victory here is the fact that finally you've had two of the highest court judges sit there and say judges are not above the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Judges are not, judges themselves, there's norms that we have to follow. There's laws we have to follow. There's precedent that we have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I looked at that and went, that's a victory in itself because it's something that you and I have been saying for the longest time about activist judges. And you've got two justices in the Supreme Court pointing out the activist judges and not just the liberals, but the so-called constructionists on the Supreme Court also calling them out on it.
Right.
And it's about time because when they do wrong, it needs to be pointed out they're doing wrong. And coming from that high up, I actually viewed as a victory because now that's out there. It's like, okay, let's debate this. Well, you're right. Well, you didn't wait for the appeals court decision? What are you talking about? You didn't wait for what?
How do you jump the gun like this with a directive attached to it? In such a it was a big decision, and no attention given. In fact, you totally disregarded the entire procedural issue here at the lower court. How do you not let the process play out? I mean, in hours after it happened, I was surprised when it came in late, and then reading into it, and then it was like, wait a minute. Because I always do this as a layman. What am I missing? You and I, as you mentioned, we've covered this for years. But it's, what am I missing? It was frustrating as hell.
I came into the show still saying, am I missing something?
No,
am I missing something? Am I missing
that's
something?
kind of the all weekend kind of been really work-wise at the top of my mind. What? Somebody explain this to me.
Right. What am I?
Because then when I read Alito's statement later on Saturday, I thought, okay. All right. No, this is exactly what it looks like to me. But it was still, but there has to be more that I'm missing here. A bigger piece to the puzzle when you have the Supreme Court jumping the gun, ignoring procedure, basically tossing that part to the side and adding a directive to it for the administration. That, to me, extremely dangerous precedent. And I don't, to start that kind of, again, we went back with Chief Justice Roberts he did that with Obamacare, I think on a couple of issues, but the biggest one was, is it a penalty or is it a tax? Nope. They debated it in public, the Obama administration. They were debating it. And a penalty is a tax is a penalty. My gosh. Look at this, and it's like, part of me is saying inevitably we were going to get here. Mm-hmm. And I don't get the reasoning at all from the High Court.
866-98 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. As always, we do appreciate it. Coming up following the top of the hour, we will get to the politics of all this, and probably continue with more of the legalities of what happened over the weekend with the Supreme Court. Plus, it looks like there is maybe a civil war going on in the Democratic Party.
Well, again, so my question would be, why did it take David Hogue to get it to that point? He's a radical. He's young, though. He's limited in power. I mean, he's one of the top at the DNC, but this is the fight. He's the one that set that off. By the way, it would be, I thought it was kind of normal to hear them say, no, we're going to challenge it. If you're not radical enough, we'll primary you. I mean, I thought that was kind of normal for them.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Hi, I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley.
Hello.
We hope you had just a wonderful, wonderful Easter weekend.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's
got the weather out west of our immediate area got pretty scary. My oldest daughter was traveling home from a town on the other side of that, and then she called me Saturday evening and said, Dad, things don't look right. You always told me about, you can tell when the atmosphere's unstable. And she said, it just doesn't look right. The sky looks odd. She goes, I looked at the forecast and I saw there were some storms ahead of me on this highway that she was on. And so I said, all right. There's a stop coming up based on where you are. There's a stop coming up. It's a truck stop. Pull in there for a minute while I get some things online because I had been on the road as well, and I was just getting home. I pulled everything up, pulled up local WFAA app, and they were doing a really great job at covering tornadoes that were on the ground at that moment.
I know.
That she would have intersected right at that point. And I said, you need to stay where you are. She stayed where she was around 45 minutes or so. And then when she left, there was tornado activity in the area she had just left, about 30 minutes after she left. There was very strong, severe storms and a reported tornado in that area. And everything had cleared out ahead of her. Those other tornadoes had moved on to the north. And then when she got past that area, there was more tornado outbreaks, and it was just, I was just nervous, I mean, she's my oldest daughter. She's an adult. She has 4 children of her own, but they're always your babies, And so we were able to thread that needle. But for everybody, I mean, you see those things, and there were lots of pictures coming in of the tornadoes that were on the ground and everything else. And it's always just mind-boggling, the power of those storms. But we're in that season, Here we are. We're past mid-April, and in this part of the country, and a lot, it seems now, a growing part of the country. They used to call us Tornado Alley, but they don't call. I guess they still call it Tornado Alley, but you can expand the territory under Tornado Alley out a little bit more. There's just been so many outbreaks in recent years, especially very damaging tornadoes. So you take that very seriously, and hopefully everybody who was affected by those tornadoes is okay.
Yeah, it was, and that system, man.
Yeah,
we've had some impressive weather systems that go from Texas all the way up.
Yeah.
There was one last week that almost went from the border of Mexico all the way up to Lake Erie. It was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
I mean, those are some huge systems. We expect it during the springtime, but let's come on, Mother Nature. Let's just calm down just a little bit. One of the things we wanted to talk about was, that we talked about the Supreme Court temporary injunction that they put into effect and just how that boggled our minds. And the fact is, it's okay to criticize judges. We criticize politicians, and nobody says you're threatening them when you do it. Judges make bad decisions. They've been on too high of a pedestal for too long of a time. And if they do wrong and they're not following the law and they're not following precedent, well, then you ought to hit them on it. And so it's justifiable to do that. They don't sit. There is nobody in this republic that sits on an ivory tower and cannot be criticized. Just because they're appointed and not elected does not mean you can't criticize them.
Right.
So we had talked about that, and my belief that politically Trump wants to make this an issue. He wants to make it an issue. Why? Because he's been a victim of lawfare. You look at everything that, what's her name? The AG of New York. I got mind blank here.
Letitia James.
Letitia James. Thank you so much. I was thinking of Fonnie Willis. I wanted to put an F to the beginning of Letitia. I'm like, no, that's not it, Gary. Fatisha, no. But you look at this and you say, they really don't give a damn about the law. We look at the judges involved in the lawfare. They didn't give a damn about the law. And so there are bad judges out there. There are good judges out there. There are bad judges. My point is, in any human endeavor, you find people that do the wrong thing. And the media for too long, I believe, has put, and many politicians have put judges on this pedestal that they can't be criticized. The hell they can't. Of course they can. Because you criticize them does not mean you're threatening them. There is a difference. There is a difference in our system. The First Amendment is about political free speech. You have a right to criticize a judge. You don't have a right to threaten judges, but you have a right to criticize judges. And I'm glad that the people that are criticizing the judges happen to be two of the highest judges in the United States.
Yeah.
With the whole thing with Letitia James, you're not above the law. And Alito and Thomas put out that same message. Just because you're Supreme Court judges does not put you above the law. And that's a good thing that happened. Now, the other thing is when it comes to the entire thing on illegal immigration, I also think that Trump wants to keep this in the news as long as possible. His poll numbers have skyrocketed the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Or really the last week. I saw the highest he's been in Rasmussen, like 51% in a while. He was down to 47.
Yeah.
I believe Trump, there's a lot of challenges that this administration has right now. They got a 3-day break on tariffs, but the tariff news was out there, but it wasn't high profile because the Democrats are obsessed with deporting gang members, which is a good thing for the administration. But, you've got the tariffs looking at the futures right now down again for Monday. I overheard, I don't know exactly what they did, but when I was waiting in line on Friday night to catch the plane, 5 people talking. They're all international business people because one had come in from Singapore, one had come in from somewhere else. And they were talking about, okay, we're set for a couple of months. We made sure massive inventory from the Chinese tariffs. What else? And they basically said, we don't know. Everything's on hold for us now. Now that we made sure that everybody has the inventory that they need, everything's on hold. We don't know what we're going to do. And so you saw that China return that 737 MAX back to Boeing, right? And so you're going to start seeing the impact of it now with higher prices and probably some shortages. And that is a challenge that they have. And when we see the tariffs, we had talked about this as we watched the polls go down each and every day. And still on the economy and prices, Trump is way underwater on that. And so that's a challenge that they have. This keeps that out of the news. Did you hear any Trump talk? Did you hear any tariff talk over the weekend?
No.
Not much. It was in there. It wasn't front page at all. The other thing that's boiling under the surface right now, and this could blow up, and you had said it earlier, and the same thing with me, I don't trust any sources now. Part of the problem with covering anything right now is you and I will read a story and say, okay, is there another media outlet that has it? All right, what accusation are they making?
Right.
Did they highlight it so you can click it and see, okay, they're making this case. Is there evidence for it? And one of the things has been Hegseth.
Yeah, right.
And everything that's been going on. You and I asked the question last week. I think we were talking about it when we left. You had 3 people close to Hegseth that were fired from the Defense Department for leaking.
Right.
They put out a statement saying, we have no idea what they're talking about. We have no idea what we have supposedly leaked. We still support, and this is the interesting thing, we support Trump, Vance, and the MAGA movement, but we have no idea why we were fired.
Right. Yeah.
And so we both, you and I looked at it, okay, these are people, especially I think the top 2 that knew, I don't know about the third one, but the top 2 appointed and very close have worked with Hegseth before. And we're saying, what are these leaks about? What's going on? And then the story coming out over the weekend about Hegseth, and it was multiple media had it. You actually were going through with me off the air the number of media outlets. You go, okay, so I checked this one and said, I don't believe this. And I checked this one and said, I'm not sure. Let me see if there's more. You kept going through trying to find more media outlets verifying the whole, what do you call it? The signal chat.
Right.
There's Wall Street Journal with that. Hegseth faces heat after new signal chat emerges and claim of Pentagon chaos. A former Hegseth advisor suggested Sunday night that Trump should consider replacing the embattled defense chief. There it is here, NBC News, just out early here in the last 45 minutes. Hegseth shared information ahead of Yemen strikes in signal chat with wife and brother. You know, you and I talked about it when you have 3 people that are let go, and we said it. We said Hegseth was in deep trouble when he came out and said, nothing that I released was classified.
Right.
On the attack on the Houthis. Everybody, I don't care whether you were a conservative or wherever you were, if you know anything about intelligence, you knew at that point he was BSing.
Yeah.
We all knew he was BSing because when you have an attack on any nation, whether you're officially at war or not, anything that is released from the Pentagon concerning that attack is assumed to be classified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it still doesn't explain away how somebody from the Atlantic helps to populate that call or that chat. You know, that's, again, you have to get down to how it happened, how all of that actually went down. And now the second story on that is, again, I just have open-ended questions because I don't always fully trust the journalists at Wall Street Journal. We talked about that.
Yes.
They can be far more liberal than the editorial board these days at the Wall Street Journal. We don't always agree with the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal either. So I don't fully trust any given source. I just want to see what we look for is how wide the story is going. And right now, again, everybody seems to be bouncing off of the New York Times version, what was written in Politico, all of these things. And so I look at that, again, with a grain of salt. And I just have the questions. And the questions are, who was on those chats? And were they or were they not authorized to be on those chats?
And the White House keeps saying that Hegseth has never. They continue with that narrative, and that's wrong. And we said it when it happened. And anybody who knows anything about intelligence, you know how we know that? We knew that from Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
That's how we know it. Well, it wasn't classified. Certainly it is.
Yeah.
When it's created, it's classified.
Yep.
And so when it's created, it's assumed to be classified. Mm-hmm. And anything involving that going on when it comes out of the Pentagon involving an attack on another nation is assumed to be classified when it happens. We broke it down, the 3 levels of classification of it, and the White House is still making that claim. And the longer they make that claim, the more they're going to get pushback, even from conservatives and Republicans in the intelligence business.
Yeah.
And so, when you've got that's been simmering underneath the surface all this weekend. But the only thing everybody's talking about is Garcia. But the Garcia thing's finally, as you can see, even Van Hollen was like, well, you didn't ask him whether he was a part of it.
Right.
Well, I don't care about that. I just care about due process. We'll get back to that one coming up here, the whole due processing, because he really did. He got due process. That's actually a false narrative that's out there.
Right. Yeah.
He got due process.
Right.
The only thing was a mistake in sending him to actually wasn't the prison. It's back to El Salvador.
Right.
But the fact is, you saw the report, he's been transferred. That happened.
Right.
I saw that Thursday or Friday, and they came out again as a second story yesterday. I'm like, well, we already knew this.
Yeah, we knew that.
But the fact is, El Salvador gets to decide what to do with him in their justice system.
Right.
But that's something that Trump will have this war all day with the media, with everybody, because his poll numbers are skyrocketing because of it again.
Yep.
We'll get to more of this coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company. But there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. So, yeah, I mean, the obsession with the media on Garcia really has taken any of the other challenges that Trump might find right now that might hurt him in the polls, and they're non-existent.
Right.
And they keep doubling down on the exact same thing as we've said before. You know, there seems to be this argument that they're trying to make that he wasn't convicted because the goalposts have changed. He wasn't convicted of it.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is Van Hollen admitted, I didn't ask Garcia whether he's a MS-13 gang member at all. Why not?
That would have been my first question.
Yeah, because that's the entire point. But it doesn't matter. You don't have to prove in a court of law that you're a gang member to deport someone. He already had a deportation order that existed, and the analysis of a few judges, law enforcement, is he was. You don't have, this isn't a court case where you prove in a court of law that you're a gang member.
Right.
And so it's just, the whole point is ridiculous. He's now, I don't know whether it will die now because they moved him out of that prison into another prison, but that is, again, that's under the direction of the El Salvador justice system. He's an El Salvador citizen at this point. And so the public's looking at this, and you've seen the polls as well as I have. I mean, the Rasmussen and other polling, it's now ticking up and ticking up significantly for Trump as he's got a ton of challenges ahead, but he'll keep it on illegal immigration all day.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Democrats are the ones keeping it in the news by screaming about it every day. And then the public looks into it and goes, well, are you kidding me? This is who you're defending?
Right.
And then it's funny. Well, the one case for Van Hollen of the American people that have been killed by gang members, he doesn't care about. Well, they're two different cases. Not politically, they're not.
No. They all live in the same house.
Politically, it's all about illegal immigration.
Yep.
And when you have compassion for the one that people believe is a criminal and not for the victims, you can't win that.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here. Whew. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen to us whenever you want, whenever you choose. Yeah.
And thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So there you go. We'll see what happens with that Hegseth story. But it's funny that you said that because we are in that time now where every single story that comes out, you and I are looking for another story to verify it, looking for, anything that they highlight, and so we can click it to see, okay, where are you getting your information from? But it's so bad in the media now, and you make a great point. We don't trust anybody right now. We don't trust in the media. It's
there are times I'll ask my own mother for a picture ID, and it's I've just always been one of those when I look into something because of what we do, it brings up a lot of questions. And now the New York Post is they launched a story off of the Wall Street Journal version of the story, so you have several media groups that are reporting this. Again, we don't know what's true, what isn't true. But I have open-ended questions. Are these allegations in these stories, which are all the same allegations, true? And if so, were any of those people not qualified to be on the call? The question, his brother is Department of Homeland Security, but his wife and personal lawyer, that would bring those two into question at least. And I don't even know that the brother is cleared to be on a call in a conversation like that. And
wow. I didn't know. New York Post, it's the lead story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy,
It just hit a little while ago.
That moved quickly, didn't it?
Yeah. It when I saw it from CNN, and then they mentioned the New York Times version, and then they mentioned the stuff written in Politico by one of the top staffers that is no longer at the Pentagon. It's like, okay, I can look at this and say, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, but I do know this. The president likely knows the truth right now. And if he doesn't know the truth by now, there's an even bigger problem. I checked Pete Hegseth's page a little while ago. I have not checked the actual website at the Pentagon, so there may be something there, but I have not seen a statement in response to these stories. And that's also, again, easy enough to say, well, it's Easter Sunday. Yeah, but you're always the defense secretary, even on Easter Sunday when things are coming out. And especially if these allegations are untrue or there's no great concern here, you want to get ahead of those as quickly as possible so that you can have your talking points in place when everything hits the ground running on Monday.
Well, the talking points are nothing that he has shared at any time has been classified.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
If that's your defense, that's a problem.
Yeah, if you're
for the
still
White House.
going with that,
Yeah.
that is very weak, and it was from the beginning. It has to you have to assume it's going to be classified until it is or is not deemed classified when you're talking about a situation like that on a mission. That's just the way it's been handled. That was the response by pretty much everybody left and right on that. Don't use that as the excuse. Again, the question is, are these chats, these signal chats, populated by people who shouldn't be on them? We already know the answer with the Atlantic reporter. Well, then, and this is coming out, again, when a second story hits, it's like, okay, well, how wide is the story? How bad is the problem? I think everybody was in agreement too, or it seemed to be the case, that everybody was in agreement in finding a remedy here that would not include future discussions on signal in this regard. You would not have similar situations like this going forward. Again, who all was on the call that shouldn't, or on the chat that shouldn't have been there? And how does that happen? And I have confidence that the president knows the truth by this point. The question is, what is to be done about it? We'll know soon enough. They still have the Easter egg roll planned for Monday morning or Monday mid-morning, whenever it is, at the White House.
I don't know.
Is the Easter Bunny going to get in with a scoop?
Well, in New York, remember, that was the big story. Hochul said they can't afford the eggs for the Easter egg roll.
No, okay.
It is New York, though.
Yeah. Maybe true. Yeah.
I think that's my buddy from New York was posting that over the weekend. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But we'll see where that story goes. The other thing, I just popped into my mind a couple of stories that were written. First off, the story on the Real ID. Mm-hmm. Blue states rallied for illegal immigrants to obtain driver's licenses ahead of Trump's Real ID crackdown. Trump did not create the whole Real ID thing.
No.
This isn't. It's not a Trump thing.
No.
This was a W thing.
Right.
Happened a long time ago.
Yep.
They've been delaying it year after year after year after year, and Trump's saying, let's do this.
Right.
And,
either we're going to do it or not do it.
Right. And this isn't Trump. Congress passed the law.
Right.
In 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Trump didn't do it. The other one is Democrats object to Trump's executive order on Title IX, as if Trump's executive order is what the states won't follow, when actually what the states won't follow is the congressionally passed law, which was Title IX, which stated it was Obama, through his executive actions, to state that sex can be whatever you want, mm-hmm. because it's sex that's defined in Title IX. Obama's the one that changed it. Trump is only saying, no, my executive order is that what Congress passed is what Congress passed. Mm-hmm. It's not Trump. Congress passed it. Mm-hmm. Democrats are the ones that are attempting and did successfully, through executive order, change the law.
Yeah, right.
It's not Trump.
No, it isn't.
Trump is trying, can't believe that Trump is doing this. Why is Trump an executive order? Why is Trump trying to take away their... Trump's simply taking away what the Democrats did by changing a law that Congress passed.
Yep. Yeah.
drive me nuts over the weekend
Yeah.
with that stuff. It's just like, oh, man, it's.
Well, it's the approach to everything, right? But really what it is, the left is angry that Trump is enforcing the law.
Yeah.
You look at whether it's deportations or anything else, how dare he enforce the law?
And that's the whole thing, though. We're not going to follow what Trump didn't tell you to follow it. Congress did.
Right.
Congress passed it.
Yep.
We're not going to pay attention to that Hitler, to that fascist, because Trump is attempting to enforce the law that our elected representatives in our constitutional republic passed. And if Trump does that, that's fascism.
Yeah.
Trump should not enforce laws that our elected representatives passed who represent us, because that's authoritarianism and that's Nazism.
Yeah, right.
Was I wrong at any point there?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't wrong at any
Enforcing the
point.
law is authoritarianism. That's exactly what the left has been saying.
It's not.
That's their reaction to everything. How dare he enforce the law?
Yeah. That wasn't.
Deportations, it doesn't matter.
And I think it's going to be a zoo this week. I think it's going to continue just.
I think it is too. I think, being blindsided by that Supreme Court decision late Friday night, it's, again, because the remedy here, the only thing you can do in this case is to wait to see where it goes next, where the cases go next.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And it's frustrating all day when they jump the gun and act in this way. I can't think of a case where they did this on such a great scale. There are plenty of cases that the Supreme Court has decided on that I've disagreed with over the years, but this ignored procedure.
Yeah, maybe there was a case, but I don't remember ever where the Supreme Court made a ruling on something that they had nothing to rule on.
Right.
Because the appeals court didn't make a decision yet.
Right.
It's like, well, you're supposed to analyze what the appeals court did. They haven't done anything yet. It's still sitting there.
Right. How does that even happen?
Right. And you do it in 8 hours. You don't even bring in both parties.
No.
It's just bad, yeah.
I mean, it's like making a decision on a case without a hearing. That's what it feels like.
I know.
Yeah. And that's where we are. It'll be interesting. There's basically the entire world is waiting to hear what's next on the tariff thing with China. What's next on the tariff thing with Mexico and Canada? The questions that will be out there about Hegseth today. And then you saw the egg controversy, right, on the egg roll. The liberal media is making a big controversy that they're using, tens of thousands of eggs when consumers are struggling to pay for eggs themselves.
I should have figured. I didn't hear that, but I should have figured that was coming.
Yeah. It's here it is from MSNBC.
Oh, my God.
Are they going to change their logo to MS-13 NBC? I don't know, maybe. I
already saw that.
Did you?
That already
I was going to say, someone had to have already done that. Yeah. The Easter egg roll will also feature the traditional egg roll and egg hunt with eggs, quote, donated by American egg farmers, end quote, the First Lady's office said. According to the American Egg Board, about 2,500 dozen eggs, or 30,000 total eggs, are being provided for the egg roll at a time when egg prices for consumers have soared. Yeah, how dare you waste eggs on an egg roll? Lighten up, Francis. My question is the Easter Bunny or whoever's covering it for the media, because the Easter Bunny got the scoop on Biden running for a second term. Remember that with Al Roker? Easter Bunny and Al Roker got in on that. But someone is going to ask a question at some point today, or a number of questions on the Hegseth thing. And we'll see what the statement is. I would expect them to do this before the president makes any appearance anywhere.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. I see Jasmine Crockett has returned.
Oh, yeah.
I got to ask a couple questions over the weekend on that. So what's up with a couple of my buddies? What's up with Jasmine Crockett? I go, I don't know. I've been busy this weekend. Did she do something else?
Right. Yeah.
Apparently she did. Slammed for comparing Trump to MS-13 member. So we'll get to that coming up here.
Well,
in a little bit. Plus, that's the other thing. Just green energy. What's going on with tariffs? What the stock market is looking to do this week, and a whole bunch more. All coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hello.
hi.
All right, I love this one. A new poll out. A new Yale poll finds that Senator John Fetterman and ESPN host Stephen A. Smith are the only two individuals who register negative net favorability ratings among more than a dozen names floated to Democratic voters recently. The Yale Youth Poll released its spring 2025 survey of the prospects of potential 2028 candidates and found both men upside down with their party's young voters.
Oh.
Fetterman, a pro-Israel Democrat, came in with a negative 17.2 net favorability among his party's registered voters. Smith, who recently floated a presidential run and increased his political rhetoric in recent months, faced a minus 16.9 net favorability among Democrats. The poll found that a plurality of Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents would vote for the former Vice President Kamala Harris, 27.5%, if the Democratic primary were held today. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 21.3%, came in second.
All right.
Pete Buttigieg, third at 14%. No other Democrat received more than 5% of the votes. That means Newsom is dead still. Apparently, the podcast is not helping him.
I guess it's not, trying to reach out to the young ones, the Utes.
Hey, we're going to do a podcast and relate to the younger people.
Hey, the kids like the podcast, don't they? All right, let's do one of those.
What the kids are talking about means zero now, but you got to give them a break in Teenland now, in Dreamland now.
Mm-hmm.
Lyrics from a song from the band The Northern Pikes, just so people know. Okay, here we go.
It was laughable from the beginning, but that was part of the play. By Newsom's office. We know how to be hip. We'll keep bobbing our head, and we'll do a podcast. Right. We're going to do a podcast.
So that was a number for all Democrats. For young Democrats, the top three candidates were the same among young Democrats, only with even stronger support for Harris, 37.4%, Ocasio-Cortez, 28.2%, and weaker support for Buttigieg, 9.7%. I would love to look. Let's be honest. Harris can't. I was going to say can't do a paragraph without.
Oh, let's go slow. She can't do a full sentence.
She can't do a full sentence. Ad lib.
Yeah.
If you're a dumb dem, I almost said. If you're a young dem, well, Freudian slip. If you're a young dumb dem, for God's sakes, were you paying attention the last 2 years?
Well, oh come on! Why do we got to bring David Hogue into this? But
I mean, what?
But what Hogue said about challenging those who aren't radical enough.
She should be number one.
Yeah.
She agreed with Trump. She said she'd be tougher on the border and she'd get the wall done.
Right.
That was her first ad.
You support somebody, or at least a plurality of you, support somebody who wants to build a wall, and we all believed that she wanted, right, to build a wall?
Now, for the favorability ratings, Harris, AOC, and Buttigieg also have the highest favorability ratings among Democrats, with Harris and Ocasio-Cortez both at about plus 60% net favorability rating. If you want to know why the Democratic Party is in a civil war right now, Harris and Ocasio-Cortez plus 60% net favorability rating. John Fetterman and Stephen A. Smith, minus 17.2% for Fetterman and minus 16.9% for Smith. Look, Fetterman's still a liberal. He just says a Holocaust against Jews is wrong.
Yeah.
And he's in negative territory. That's why we said this isn't just about all the insanity, the anti-Semitism, the racism of the identity politics, the misogyny of the radical transgender movement. Democrat rank and file love it. Young Democrats love it. They're all into racism and misogyny. Apparently, otherwise, they wouldn't have that big of a favorability rating.
Right.
You would have people say, okay, Fetterman and even Stephen A. Smith, you could view them and say they're actually moderate Democrats. They just don't want to have the insanity, and the Democrats are like, get the hell out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. And this isn't Congress. This is the people, the Democratic voter. We don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Survey found if the 2028 Republican primary were held today, 50% of GOP voters under the age of 30 would support JD Vance. There you go. Now, David Hogue doing the Sunday morning news shows. Here's what he said, okay. Newly elected DNC vice chair defends his plan to spend $20 million primarying older established Democrats in safe houses in 2026. He said, what I'm trying to do with this effort right now, with the primaries in particular, is to do two things at once. One, make sure that we're handling, the conflicts within our own party productively and seats that do not risk us losing the majority, while making sure that we make Hakeem Jeffries the next Speaker of the House by rallying our base and giving people something to vote for. We cannot just be the party that is against Donald Trump. We have to be the party that doesn't have 27% approval from our own base. That is not a survivable future. The way we change that is to make sure we have some different characters. We're talking Democratic politics all the time about it's the messaging. It's the messaging. It's the messaging. You can have Shakespeare write the best script. If you have bad actors, it doesn't matter. And the only thing that he really brought up about attacking Trump on was he said they're furious about what's happening with Social Security. Nothing's happening to Social Security
Right
now.
Yeah, what are you furious about?
Right. They're furious with the rising costs that Trump has inflicted on the American people. Well, that's still to come. American people haven't responded to that yet. But basically, prices is the one thing that he said that you can look at Democrats hitting. But other than that, he's simply saying we don't have the right characters. He's making the case that we have a Shakespeare script, but the people cannot message it correctly. Anybody think that's where the Democratic Party actually is, or are they delusional to think that? How does he actually differ from anybody else?
Right.
Any other Democrat right now? Because they're all saying none of them are changing their minds. Is any Democrat except Fetterman and maybe Stephen A. Smith changing their minds on any issues at all? Or differing at all from the Republican narrative on all the insane opinions they hold on the issues? Is anyone? No, they all hold the same. They all hold the same opinion on all the same issues that ensured that they lost in 2024. The only thing that they have, the only thing they're hoping is that prices go up and they can use that against Trump. Yeah, that's about it.
Right. Well, it's something that they've been focused on for a long time. Focus on the crisis at hand in order to win. And that's what, if there becomes any kind of economic crisis, then they, the difference with the Democrats is they'll create a crisis where it doesn't exist. And they will capitalize on that crisis that they exist, like when Joe Biden broke the border and Kamala Harris promised to fix it with building a wall.
Well, or the crisis of deporting illegal immigrant criminals.
Yeah. All right.
That's a crisis to them. But here's Hakeem Jeffries on This Week talking about David Hogg. Here we go.
David Hogg, who I know you know, a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, he's going to be joining us on the roundtable. And he is pursuing this effort to unseat some Democrats in safe seats through primary challenges. He's talked about a culture of seniority politics that is not working for the party. He said, quote, "We need a better Democratic Party and need to get rid of the Democrats in safe seats who do not understand what is at stake now, who are asleep at the wheel, not meeting the moment, and are a liability now into the future of our party." What's your response to this idea of targeting some of your Democratic incumbents?
Well, I look forward to standing behind every single Democratic incumbent, from the most progressive to the most centrist and all points in between. They're working hard in their communities, rising to the occasion.
Okay, that's the rest was blah 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 blah, yada yada yada. You didn't go anywhere with with it.
No.
Here's Donna Brazile on This Week.
Oh,
here we go.
Okay.
Here we go.
They're losing trust in all of our institutions, the media, business, whole of civil society. We're in a crisis. I don't know if we want to call it a constitutional crisis, but we're in, as former President Biden was here, an inflection point. Look, I think what David is trying to do is to not just help to re-energize the party, but to help rebrand the Democratic Party. The concern that officers of the DNC right now, they have signed the neutrality pledge. David did not sign the neutrality pledge. So he's in hot water with Ken. I told him he threw a rock in the water, and him and the two of them and the officers, they got to get out of the hot water. But that's not my position right now. My position is many of these so-called safe blue seats, and I can get in trouble. Many of them are seats that women and minorities finally had an opportunity to come and sit in, because there were no seats at the table for us. So before you start wiping clean the menu and the plates and the seats, be very careful, because many of those seats are in districts where we are.
Well, as we know, because when the nominations went, they spent an enormous amount of time on DEI, and they put 2 white men in there for the DNC.
Exactly.
As you notice, except the prices, which of course are going to hit because you if the prices go up, except for that, everything's the same. He's not bringing anything new to the table, and he said it, that we need our problem is messaging, that where we stand on the issues is not a problem. We need new messaging, and the old people can't message correctly. What he's simply saying is the American public isn't buying it. Well, what he is saying is the American public would agree with where we stand on our insane opinions on the issues if somebody else could BS it properly.
Right. Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
There's nothing different. Other Democrats are saying the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
That it's the messaging. That's the whole point. Everybody's saying it's the messaging. It's the messaging. We need a new brand. Well, what does that mean, new brand? Does that mean you're going to change your opinion on any of the insane opinions you hold on the issues? Nobody is saying that. Nobody is saying that in the Democratic Party.
Well, and the radicals, in terms of the rank and file, need you to state exactly where you are in the position. You can't get through. You can't get by with the blah, 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 Hakeem Jeffries. The radicals, including young voters, need you to be radical. They need your party to be radical. They expect you to talk in radical terms. And again, remember, silence is violence. You can't get by with trying to say different things, even though we all know you're going to enact a radical agenda if you were to win.
Right.
That's not enough for them. They're not going to help you win unless you own your radical agenda and promote it. That's where they are. David Hogue represents that group.
Yeah.
He's a member of that group.
But there is no change on the issues. They're simply saying the rebrand is different person. He said it.
Yeah.
We need different personalities selling it, that the messaging is wrong.
Right.
The issues are fine.
Right.
Does anybody believe that where the Democrats stand on the issues is fine?
No.
That the messaging has just been wrong?
But they'll never see that.
That this messaging of the Democrats' incredible goodwill towards mankind and the Constitution is simply not being explained right by the current members because it's so complicated. We need fresh, new personalities in there to sell these incredible ideas that the American public is longing for.
We've heard this before a number of times now. And you're not going to, sorry, the ideas don't change. The agenda is not going to change, and we all know that.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So, there may be this civil war going on in the Democratic Party, but the civil war is not on the issues. And if it's not on the issues, there really isn't a civil war.
Right.
It's just
on the messaging.
Right. It's just
they think.
Right. We just need different messengers here, and it's the establishment trying to keep those establishment seats.
Mm-hmm.
It also may be the fear that David Hogg is so radical that the people that he may put in, he may look at it and say, we need somebody like AOC. We need somebody like Jasmine Crockett. These are the people that will fight for them. And there may be in the establishment of the Democratic Party, not the DNC, but the Democratic Party leaders in Congress, like Hakeem Jeffries, we don't need these people that sound like nutbags.
Yeah.
We need people that will promote our radical agenda in a calm, elderly way.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That may be the dumbest thing I've ever said. The dumbest analysis.
Well,
but the analysis may be true.
Well, that they can get by with, again, the blah, blah, blah.
Right.
That Hakeem Jeffries was trying to put out there. You know, Hakeem Jeffries is a radical.
Yeah. He's just as radical as David.
Right.
There is no difference.
Well, my question is he going to, is Jeffries now going to end up on the list? The list. Of
David Hogue list
by young voters of who right now there's only a couple of people at the top of that list, but Hakeem Jeffries for doing the blah blah blah. Well, we're going to blah 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 blah. That sounded like the Democrats' version of John Boehner. We don't like messy. I mean, it's and you can't do that if you're a Democrat. You need the radicals. And the radicals want you to get out there and own it.
Well, if there's debate right now in the Republican Party, the vast majority of it is on issues.
It's on issues. Yeah, it really is. Spending, tariffs, national security, in terms of do we help Ukraine or not help Ukraine or whatever it might be. But it's all issues.
It's all issues, yeah. The only thing that may not be an issue, we did the poll last week that showed the majority of Americans agree, for example, what Trump's doing on immigration, but they disagree with his tone.
Yeah.
So there may be a small debate saying, look, if you do the proper tone, we can sell this even better, but you're not going to convince the president on that on immigration because his numbers are as high as they've probably ever been on illegal immigration.
Yeah.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. I just wanted to mention I had a great conversation with my fellow plane passenger the other day. It was interesting because I met a gentleman I think he said he was 68 years old. Very young looking guy though. And he was saying, he asked me if, I was retired, and I said, no, not retired, don't have any plans on retiring. And he retired, and he said, but I volunteer for this homeless shelter. He started talking about the homeless shelter, and then I mentioned about the homeless shelter that I support. And I said, if I was retired, I'd probably volunteer there. I just don't have the time. I said, but I support them. And I explained to him what the homeless shelter that I support does. And I said, they're more than just, they have an area where they just, where they'll feed people if you need to be fed. But if you want to stay there, you have to be in the program. Mm-hmm. And every year I go to this wonderful luncheon where you talk, these people, the clients that are there that come through. It's wonderful because they seek out people that want their life changed, people that have been homeless on the streets that want to change. There's plenty of homeless shelters that just, feed you and will keep you there or whatever. Mm-hmm. But this is, we started talking about it, and he just lit up and he just said, I don't know what to do. Talking about the homeless shelter that he volunteers for. And somebody else he knows also, I don't want to give too much information out because it was a private conversation, but somebody else he knows works for them. And they get so frustrated. He said, all we're doing is enabling. It was a wonderful conversation, though. And this is somebody who actually is volunteering to work there and whose significant other also works there.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's like we're spinning wheels. We're not getting anywhere. And so he wanted to know everything about the homeless shelter that I help support and what they do and everything else. And the funny thing is his eyes just lit up. And I said, look, there's nothing better. Said, look, if somebody's hungry and you feed them, that's a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you find people that want to change their life and you provide all the assistance and there's a carrot at the end, and we talked about the carrot, how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a carrot, and they change. Whenever I go to this luncheon and meet these people that are clients that have gone from homelessness, and I'm talking about abused mothers, alcoholics, drug addicts that change their life, that want to change their life, and there's something there for them to do it. I said, the funny thing is they thank me for helping to support the process of doing that. And I turned back to them. I said, no, thank you. There's nothing more joyful to me. There's not, my support is nothing compared to the accomplishment that they make, that they get it. They want, they want to do it. They don't know where to go. And that's in life, a lot of us deal with that. If you get laid off or something like that, a lot of us are lost. You don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
But they make that decision to do it. They find an organization that's willing to help them. You follow the rules. You want to do it. We'll get you there. And then when they become self-sufficient, the joy that they have, nothing can beat that. Yeah. Nothing. And I was just such a great conversation I had. The gentleman did not know. I didn't tell him what I did for a living or anything like that. So he didn't know. We were just talking about, again, homeless shelters. And I just wanted to talk about that because it was just for a moment, bring that up, because you could tell that he loves volunteering. He wants to volunteer. He wants to help. He's retired and everything else, and he wants to make that part of his life, but he feels like he's spinning wheels.
Well, this has been the conundrum in that, entire group of organizations who have focused on helping the homeless. You quite often see that, well, you don't want to close the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
That seems far less than compassionate on somebody who repeatedly shows up, right?
Right.
And then those who volunteer or give money or serve on the board of directors, they're looking at how to better serve the community. Well, it goes further than just serving a number of meals or serving a number of people each meal or housing a number of people per day. The question is, how many are able to go from that experience onto a better experience and not back on the street? Or, how many are part of a revolving door situation? There's an article the other day, John Bon Jovi's restaurant, which is kind of a, pay what you can kind of restaurant that he started years ago. And the mayor in the town there said, we've got this growing population now centered around this restaurant of homeless people. We've seen this kind of, that's not state or city policy. That's somebody who's doing it as a part of charity work, but it can have the same effect. We've seen that with California. We've seen it with areas where they have more, quite frankly, liberal attitudes toward it. And look, I've given food to people who are hungry. I've been a supporter of food banks for a long, long time. That doesn't necessarily serve homeless individuals, but it can serve people, of course, who are down on their luck. But there are great concerns even there, of, all right, is there any kind of means test or auditing process that has the organization in a place where, okay, number one, can we even ask the question, are you worthy of this help, right? But then beyond that, are you doing something for yourself that will get you to a better place beyond this help we're giving you. I've been on, I don't know, a handful of boards where we had to go through the auditing process, and we were in one of them in one case, and the organization is still around, giving millions to people. They hand out checks. But the process in applying for that assistance is very thorough, and it's followed up on, and it's also limited. You're not going to get a check from them over and over and over again. It's something I think that people fully understand. Nobody fully understands the homeless problem.
No,
but
because each case is individual.
But we know that there are areas where, whether it's cities, states, counties, where they take a different approach to it and will tell you they're doing something noble, but all they're doing effectively is creating a greater homeless problem in that area.
The homeless place he was telling me about actually has bought hotels. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll give you this much information. He's from California, right? So this is California.
Yeah.
But he talked about the millions they receive from the government. From what I know, there may be some government grants they get, but from what I've seen, everything from the place I deal with is private, is corporate, community, private, whatever. They're a big organization. But what was interesting when I was talking to this gentleman, and he was telling me, he said, well, the rules are supposed to be, you're supposed to be rehabilitated. He said, we can't keep caseworkers because the management won't enforce what the rules are.
Right.
And he said, here I am volunteering, and I'm fixing things, and these people are screaming at me. There's no respect, he said, from the people that we're helping towards the people that are there. They are demanding constantly. And he goes, it gets frustrating as all hell that here we are. He goes, I want to help. And I understand that, you're dealing with some homeless that have mental illnesses, which would be separate from the situation that I deal with. He said, and this was really interesting. And was it Reagan who said, who said there are some homeless that wish to be homeless? And there was a huge uproar when that was said. Mm-hmm. But this guy was telling me, he's been doing it for a few years now. He said, it's true.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true.
They want to be home. They don't want to change their life.
Right. Yeah.
He said they don't want to change it. He says all they want is the food and the shelter to continue with their habits or addictions.
Right.
And he said it gets frustrating because you're not, he said, I understand. He goes, you got to feed someone. He said, but if they don't become productive human beings, he goes, what is the end game? What is the reason you're doing it? Why are we? And it was fascinating to see. This isn't somebody from the outside, saying, all homeless people are drug addicts or whatever, and they all just throw them all out unless they want to change their life. This is somebody who's in there working every day as a volunteer and doing a lot of actual, electric work and mechanical work and, making sure everything is fine. He said, I'm being cursed out left and right. I'm a volunteer. I'm helping. And he said, and I don't see what the end game is. And he said, it's made me question, what I'm doing and how long I wish to volunteer for this particular organization. He said, because there is no appreciation. And so you wonder, you go, what is the end game? Why am I doing this? There is no end game. He said, so it gets frustrating for anybody working in that atmosphere because you're basically just feeding and giving shelter to people that don't want to change their life, who simply want to be addicts or whatever else that they're into.
Well, and that's it. The baseline cause, the root of everything has to be dealt with, whether it's mental health, addiction, or both. And in the case of addiction, it has to start with that person wanting to kick their addiction, to be done with that. And that's one of those things that, again, becomes cyclical, because even when you look at that outside of the addiction, outside of the homeless population, addiction in general, experts will tell you there is a great deal, a high rate of people going through clinics, going through the process to get clean, and then becoming an addict again. And if you don't enforce something like that, if you're going to have that as the basis of your nonprofit organization, without the enforcement of it, there really is no basis for the organization, unless you just want to become another, a soup kitchen and just say, we're going to take these rules out. We're not going to have any rules, no enforcement of anything. Anybody who shows up, we feed them while we can. We home them or we house them as we can, and we don't ask any questions. If you're going to do that, you're going to see a greater demand for what you're doing in your immediate area. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it was, like I said, fascinating conversation. It was fascinating the way it turned.
Yeah.
When he started saying this really bothers me. Now, I didn't get into the, amount of control that government has, but what he was upset about was the whole goal of the homeless organization he works for is rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but we don't do it.
Right.
We don't follow our own rules. He goes, so nobody wants to stay.
Right.
The caseworkers don't want to stay.
Right.
The administration doesn't want to stay.
Well,
government's throwing, the state of California is throwing tons of money at us.
Right.
To do what? He goes, what is our end goal? He goes, it gets very frustrating when there's no end goal to really to help change the quality of life for
that's
people.
likely what's at the basis of it. As long as they get big dollars from the government, state or federal, then they have a problem in enforcing the rule, because if they enforce their own rules, that becomes a tougher task for everybody involved. And they simply don't want to do it.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I thought this was a Babylon Bee headline. Oh, man, I was just looking at just scanning the New York Post, one of their editorials. It's their editorial from Sunday. Here's a better idea, Joe. What if you charge $300,000 not to speak?
Yeah.
Joe, oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't know the story, people don't want to pay to hear Joe Biden speak.
Well, again, look, the curiosity factor is one thing, but if you're paying him to speak and he says something, and it becomes a, whatever, the latest gaffe or just Joe Bidenism that circulates in the news, it's going to be associated with your brand or your industry, whatever group hires him, pays him to be there. All of a sudden, you're associated with that, and people don't want that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90 Red Eye. If you would like to get in here, I believe we may have some breaking news here. Fox News reporting. This is on their overnight broadcast promoting or breaking news. Pope Francis dead at 88 years old. That's just breaking right now. I don't see it on the internet. Just in the other room, they have the TV on, and they just let us know that.
Yeah.
I don't see it on anywhere yet at the moment. You?
I do not. Yes, Reuters.
Reuters has it. Okay.
Is there, in fact, they have posted a live view of St. Peter's Square following the death of Pope Francis, coming from Reuters. This was just started, this live stream there of the view of St. Peter's Square by Reuters was started just several minutes ago. And it's hard to tell how many, that's not a great deal of people yet in St. Peter's Square, given the breaking news, but I think that will increase, of course.
Yeah, Vatican News now reporting it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Washington Post now reporting Pope Francis has died at the age of 88. He was a transformative figure, and his openness and empathy for the disenfranchised reshaped the papacy, and that was from just a few seconds ago, Washington Post, on their X page.
From Vatican News, this was reported by Cardinal Kevin Farrell. Dearest brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow, I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis at 7:35 this morning. The Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and of his church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and most marginalized. With immense gratitude for his example as a true disciple of the Lord Jesus, we commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite merciful love of the one and true God. So that's the latest that we have here at the moment.
Yeah, he had suffered from a respiratory illness that had him hospitalized, and really his state during that period was in question, and at times because there were a couple of events during his stay in the hospital that seemed to be very dire in nature, taking fluids into his lungs at one point. And so he had double pneumonia. When you add more fluid into the lungs from the body, then it, of course, becomes something very, very serious. But that recently was the most recent bout with that, with his health. He was, in fact, he was in the hospital there in Rome for 37 days. Bilateral lung infection that took hold on February 14th. And it required high flows of supplemental oxygen through the prolonged stay. And at least one time required emergency blood transfusions, according to the Vatican. So his health was touch and go during the lengthy stay, which doctors reportedly having considered ending the treatment of double pneumonia so that the pontiff could die in peace. He made his first public appearance March 23rd after the hospital stay. It was actually before departing the hospital. But managing to give a wheelchair-bound thumbs up from a balcony before returning to the Vatican residence, where he began a 2-month convalescence to recover from the health care. This coming from the New York Post, which posted this just a few minutes ago.
And this from Sky News. On Sunday, he greeted crowds at the Easter Sunday service, a day after meeting U.S. Vice President JD Vance. Yeah,
I saw the videos. There was a few short clips of JD Vance greeting him. And while he was seated and looked, to be in a weaker state. There was no indication that he was at this point. But again, if you're just joining us, countless news organizations now reporting that Pope Francis has died at the age of 88.
To show you how time flies by, he's been Pope since 2013.
Isn't that crazy? Doesn't it
I
seem like it was just, it just happened? And every time they say, look, he's 88, and I'm like, no, he's not. He's not. Yeah, he is. Yeah. And that during his hospital stay, I was like, did I have it wrong? And it was like so much time had gone by is really what happened. And it just seems like it was yesterday. For a pope, in terms of the liberal media, the coverage of a pope, he got quite a bit of coverage. And so, he was in the news cycle quite a bit, aside from health issues. And maybe that was it. But Pope Francis has passed at the age of 88.
Well, I think one of the things was when he said, if a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge them? Mm-hmm. And there was some pushback for that. He then had come out and, again, reiterated last year his opposition to the radical transgender movement, abortion, euthanasia. Mm-hmm. And so I believe he was still he was saying that, look, if you're gay, you can see God, which caused a little bit of controversy. The left jumped on it as if he approved then of gay marriage and all that. And when he clarified that particular statement, it wasn't as complimentary at that point, especially when he had come out, like I said, against abortion and euthanasia and the radical transgender movement. But, there were things that many Catholics, would get upset, things that weren't about the Scripture, world events, for example, things like climate change. And when things happen, worldwide events that Catholics thought that he was wrong on. But I'm sure those things, they've been talked about. We've talked about them in the past. But right now, people thinking about the Vatican, the Catholic Church, and the Pope, who has died at 88 years of age.
Yeah.
So, okay, the pictures I'm looking at, okay, that's from Sunday. That's not right now then. But, be interesting to look at a live stream of the Vatican. One of the things, one of the recent things that came out was on illegal immigration when he talked about it. Mm-hmm. And, even Catholics had come out and said, wait a minute, I know what it was. It was when if you were attempting to get into Vatican City and weren't approved, they would throw the book at you.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what's the difference between that? And so that debate was always going on. As a debate, look, there's always debate going on inside the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. That's not like, new on that. So we will see what happens from now. It says, reading here from CNN, his medical team said his condition had stabilized, allowing for him to continue his convalescence at the residence back at the Vatican. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, he delighted the faithful by making a surprise appearance at St. Peter's Square. His death will open a debate about the future direction of the Catholic Church, with cardinals across the globe expected to gather in Rome in the coming days to mourn the pontiff and then elect his successor.
Yeah. So. It appears, again, a live view from Reuters is showing has a live view of St. Peter's Square following the announcement of Pope Francis's death. And it does appear that more people are gathering there in St. Peter's Square, which would be, of course, expected. We'll be following the story throughout the morning. Is now really this breaking over the last few minutes. The death of Pope Francis will render reactions from and responses from all over the world, which would, of course, include here in the U.S. President Trump and Vice President JD Vance. Again, as you mentioned, greeting
Just
Pope
meeting
Francis
with him over the weekend.
Over the weekend,
yeah.
And those images were everywhere.
That story is still, relatively new story. Pope Francis exchanges Easter greetings with J.D. Vance at the Vatican. Pope Francis appeared on Sunday at St. Peter's Square at the Vatican for an Easter Sunday blessing after a brief earlier meeting with J.D. Vance. Vance arrived at the Vatican shortly after 11:30 a.m. local time. The Vatican's press office said in a statement, the meeting, which lasted a few minutes, gave them the opportunity to exchange Easter greetings. Today I met with the Holy Father, Pope Francis. I'm grateful for his invitation to meet, and I pray for his good health, Vance posted on X following the meeting. At about noon, the 88-year-old pontiff arrived, appearing on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, overlooking the square filled with crowds who had attended Easter Mass, which had just ended. Seated in a wheelchair, he blessed the crowd and said, "Happy Easter." The Pope's message, Easter message, included a call for an end to conflicts in the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. I'm trying to see. Wow. I'm looking at the picture of him from yesterday. Wow.
Yeah.
He looks old, but he doesn't, he looks.
Yeah, as I was saying,
it looks good.
In the videos, the short video clips of Vice President Vance greeting him, again, he remained seated in the clips that I saw, and yeah, he looks 88, but there was no indication that he would be literally in his final days. No indication from the Vatican in recent days. I mean, clearly he was still recovering. I can tell you, as somebody who has had on and off issues with pneumonia, I have a genetic disease that also gives me other lung issues. That it's, for me, it has been recovering from pneumonia was always slow going. When I was young and I first got pneumonia, I thought I could, I was bulletproof, and I worked through that pneumonia, and I should have taken that time off. But it turns out, later found out, that I have this genetic lung situation that makes it a lot more difficult for me and longer. Now, imagine being 88. Many of us who have parents who are elderly, that my father was hospitalized with pneumonia. You know how incredibly bad it can be, but double pneumonia and then battling that in the hospital for weeks on end, as the Pope did, and then getting more fluid into his lungs at one point, which they really described as a real crisis while he was hospitalized. And then the story that, again, was being reported, that at one point they thought of ending the treatment and allowing him to go in peace. And, I can tell you that from experience, it takes a lot out of you, and I'm only 59 years old. But when your lungs aren't functioning properly, it's just recovering from that. It's just a process. And it was amazing that he was able to come out of the hospital for the period that he did, given everything that was being reported about his health.
Yeah, I have only had pneumonia once in my mid-30s. Mm-hmm. It kicked my butt.
Yeah.
I still felt it in my lungs months later.
Later.
I couldn't believe how hard that hit me. I could not believe how hard, pneumonia hits you. And like I said, I was young at that time. Luckily, I haven't had it since, but we'll keep you updated on it. The latest breaking news, Pope Francis has died, 88 years of age. 866-98-RED-I.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. When driving, you need to manage the space around your vehicle so that there's enough space to allow you to adjust when traffic conditions change. The space ahead of your vehicle is the most important and one of the easiest to monitor and adjust as needed. One rule of thumb is to allow at least 1 second for each 10 feet of vehicle length at speeds below 40 miles per hour. At greater speeds, add an additional second. It's impossible to keep other drivers from tailgating you, but there are some things you can do to make it safer, such as increasing your following distance, avoiding quick lane changes, and slowing down. There are also several things you should do to ensure that there is plenty of space between the side of your vehicle and other vehicles. Don't hug the center line, avoid hugging the right side of the road, and avoid traveling alongside other vehicles in strong winds, especially crosswinds. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. The breaking news this morning here, just in the last 20 minutes or so, Pope Francis has died at age 88. And interestingly enough, the first thing I thought of was, wait a minute, he just met with JD Vance yesterday. And looking at saw the pictures yesterday, saw more now of him sitting there. But he has died. They say, did they say pneumonia was the cause, or?
I haven't heard that yet.
But we know he had pneumonia, though.
Yeah, right. But that's what he had been dealing with here lately.
Yep. And apart from a tradition, Francis had expressed a desire to be buried outside the Vatican, aligning with his commitment to simplicity and modesty. So, but now it begins the mourning process and then the process to pick a new pope, and it will be interesting. A lot of Catholics will be looking at it saying, they want to know in the leadership of the Catholic Church, which direction are we going?
Yeah.
Look, the scandal of the priests over the last couple of decades. I was there when at church with my parents when their pastor, who I knew, said he was retiring, and it was so sad because it was sudden. We found out later on that's because he was on the list of abusers. And so, that took down the Catholic Church a lot. A lot of Catholics believe that this pope was too liberal. It'll be interesting to see where the decision process goes, because a lot of Americans, Catholics, and worldwide Catholics are wondering, hey, what direction is the Catholic Church going to go in?
Right.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here. That breaking news from the last 25 minutes or so, Pope Francis is dead, died at 88 years of age. And I know it may be a little bit of a shock. When I first saw it, when Alan was in my ear saying, breaking news from Fox, just as we went on the air to start this hour.
Yeah.
I looked and I went, just like we started the show out.
Right, yeah.
When you said, I don't believe anything I get from the media anymore. I hesitated for a second because it's just like everything, we get, and the fact that I knew that JD Vance met with the Pope yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
And he was sitting up, and
everything seemed to be at least getting better for him since his hospitalization.
And he greeted people at St. Peter's Square, and there's a picture of him, sitting and chatting with JD Vance. So I was like, okay, make sure we get this story right. That's not a story that you want to get wrong in breaking news.
Right.
And so, as we have said, we went right to the Vatican news site, and they had announced it. So, and that's the source. And if you're looking for a source, that'd probably be the best source.
Yeah. Right.
For that. So, I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about the Pope. A lot of discussion probably this week. I think you're going to hear more on tariffs. It was the one thing that I heard from business people. I overheard business people talking about it this week. That these were international business people. I don't know what they did. I overheard it. I wasn't spying on them. They were just talking loud. And it was interesting talking about the fact, well, we got enough inventory for the next couple of months, but after that, we have no idea what we're going to do, was the basic chat on that one. Did you see the one service? What is it? The one shipping service said anything over $800 are not shipping.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll find it for you here.
A price point is going to be everything, of course. But that's something that we had talked about, was the actual, I guess, full effects of the tariffs won't be felt right away. It's going to be felt. Everyone knows it will be felt, unless the tariffs are reversed. It will be felt. The question will be is, how does the consumer respond?
Yeah, here it is, because we had talked about the import tax. Wall Street Journal had brought that up. This is separate from the tariffs.
Right.
Completely. The multinational logistics company DHL Express said it would suspend global shipments worth more than $800 to American consumers, including from Hong Kong, due to U.S. customs regulatory changes. DHL, which is headquartered in Germany, said the suspension of shipments would begin today. The company said the move was a temporary measure. Everything's a temporary measure.
Well, yeah.
The company said the decision was made in response to new U.S. customs rules requiring formal entry processing of all shipments worth more than $800. The minimum was $2,500 before a change was announced on August 5th. DHL said business-to-business shipments would continue but could face delays. Shipments worth less than $800 to either businesses or consumers were not impacted by the changes. The multinational logistics company said it would suspend global shipments worth more than $800 to American consumers worldwide. It's not just coming in from China, but worldwide on that one. Looking at, we saw last week last week was down. The Dow futures starting, down today. Who knows where they'll end up? I don't know. Do we have any economic news coming in this week?
Not this week. GDP numbers for the first quarter hit on the 30th. I mean, I don't know what's coming this week. There's some economic news. I don't know. But not falling this week, but next week is the big first quarter GDP numbers that everybody's looking at. Let's see what we got lined up for this week. Some leading economic indicator numbers coming out later this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Then you get into the Philadelphia Fed president, Patrick Harker, will speak tomorrow. You'll kind of, I guess, gauge what some of these, in fact, the different Fed presidents are speaking, a few of them today, and then a couple of them tomorrow. We'll look at also new home sales. That comes out tomorrow. Then we get into consumer sentiment for April, the final report on that. And then later, a week from Wednesday on the 30th, we'll see the GDP numbers for, did I say first quarter? We'll see that will come out at 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday, the 30th. So. We'll see.
Dow futures right now down 357. That's almost 1%. S&P futures down 53, which is 1%. And NASDAQ futures down 200, which also is right there at 1%. Oil is down $1.10. It had gone up late last week, though.
Mm-hmm.
It was over $64 over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Down, it's 63.58 right now. So that's where we stand right now. But every day that this goes on, if we're not having those 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 day drops, but if it keeps dropping, 300 to 500 a day, that adds up over a period of a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right.
We're already into the 3,800s now.
Right. I think right now, I think in a big way it's indicative of the market's less confident that a fix on the tariffs is going to be the China tariffs, but also Mexico and Canada
and Europe.
And Europe. All of those things need to be remedied at some point soon. And if there is less confidence that it will happen soon, and growing confidence that it's going to take a couple of months, a few months. I know it was South Korea's president saying negotiating a deal with the U.S. on trade is going to be very difficult. So I think that's the case based on the sheer numbers.
Well, based on the sheer numbers, plus I don't know. I don't know what the United States wants right now.
Right.
I cannot tell you. Nobody can tell you. You may guess, but you don't know.
Well, and it's going to vary from nation to nation, right? I mean, it has to. And if Bessent is leading here, he's still working, at the will of the president. There was another article that I saw over the weekend. I bookmarked it. I didn't get to read the entire thing, but talking about how Bessent waited for Navarro to be somewhere else to make his move on that day that the tariffs were paused. And, it's interesting to see, but you still have to remember that, and we agree with Kudlow, Bessent is more pro-market, but he still is working at the pleasure of the president. What the president wants is still going to have to be worked out through Bessent, whether it's Bessent or Navarro. Navarro may not have the president's ear at the moment, but certainly the president has his own beliefs when it comes to trade and trade imbalance, and that's something Bessent is going to have to adhere to the best of his ability. And they said at the time, goes back a couple of weeks now, but they said at the time they had 72 nations at the door wanting to deal with, but it's the president wants to be involved directly with each of those. That means Bessent has to take the offer back to the president with each move, with each negotiation move, each step in each negotiation. My gosh, there's no telling how long that could go.
I did see, you see the story that said Bessent actually has breakfast once a week with the Fed chair, and they're getting along fine.
Yeah.
After last week, I'm like, interesting that came out.
Mm-hmm.
He seems his position in this administration is the calming whisperer.
Yeah, right.
The calm whisperer for the administration.
Right.
I'll calm things down. And so that's the thing that you have in tariffs. But every day that it goes on, even right now with what we have, the uncertainty is what leads to people not investing money. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And so how long will this go on, and what does the president want? We know it used to be about fentanyl. Now you don't hear that brought up at all.
Right. By the way, that article...
maybe once in a while. He did say China fentanyl, I think, late last week.
He did last week, yeah.
Yeah, he did say that.
By the way, that article from the Wall Street Journal, I have to find it, because it also mentioned Lutnick in the same sentence with Bessent, and essentially Bessent and Lutnick waited for their chance to get the president alone and away from Navarro, implying that Lutnick is more pro-market, more on the Bessent side than Navarro's side. That's interesting based on what Nick has said. I'll just say that.
I know.
I don't put 100% into anything. I don't care if it's Wall Street Journal, Politico, Fox News, or any of them. Source stories are out there. Source stories are a dime a dozen, it seems, unless they're tariffed, and then they could be, 12 to 15 cents a dozen. But it's depends on where they come from, which is why we want to keep all source stories, all sources, right here in the United States. So they remain what they should be, a dime a dozen.
Well, well, the prices are kept low because of the New York Times and Washington Post sources.
Right.
That's why they're a dime a dozen.
Well, but then again, you've got the, then the price of eggs. That's going to go up. 30,000 eggs expected to be used today on the White House lawn on the egg roll. Liberal media going crazy over that. Just going crazy over that. It's, by the way, they sought out sponsorships for that, corporate sponsorships for that. But you'll hear it over, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Because.
Did wasn't Schumer, who was it? Was it Raskin? Who's the one that came out and said that there's going to be a price to pay if you cooperate with Trump? Basically, it was.
Oh, yeah.
Was that Raskin?
I don't know. I can't remember. Was it Raskin?
I think it was Raskin who said it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, he's going to go after the egg producers now because they cooperated with Trump on an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, it's the farmers that donate, the eggs. So, but of course, that will contribute to an ongoing shortage of eggs. Okay. Sometimes I wonder if they just do these stories, the liberal activist media just does these stories to create busy work in the newsrooms. You know what I mean?
Or
nobody actually cares.
Or make themselves feel good.
Yeah, there's that too, right? Anything you can do, any jab you can throw at Trump. Yeah. Why not?
We know nobody believes it, but it makes me feel good.
Right.
It was Jamie Raskin.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I think this is the audio. I'll play the audio later because we don't have time to do it now.
Here's a statement on his official X page from Vice President Vance on the passing, breaking news. The Pope Francis has passed at the age of 88. That coming across in the last hour. And here is from JD Vance's official page. Vice President Vance writes, I just learned of the passing of Pope Francis. My heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. But I'll always remember him for the below homily he gave in the very early days of COVID. It was really quite beautiful. May God rest his soul. And then a link to that that the Pope wrote, or it's in writing, but he gave during COVID. So that from Vice President Vance just a few moments ago on his official X page.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. We are Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Thanks for being here. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because an hour from now, our show is over. After our show is over, if you could not listen to the whole thing, you can. Just go to our Red Eye Radio app because we record our show. It becomes our podcast, and we put it on our app right after the show is over. And also, if you cannot listen to one of our great radio stations overnight, for some reason, you can stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. Coming up following the top of the hour, the latest on the breaking news here in the last hour, Pope Francis, dead at 88 years of age after meeting just yesterday with JD Vance. Yes, the conspiracy theories are out there on X. Just so
yes,
you know.
they are.
He met with JD Vance, and so some are blaming Vance already.
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.